Hello, and welcome to Wine This Week with Scott Leek. I recently did a video explaining what this channel is, why I'm drinking 52 wines in 52 weeks, but I didn't really talk about how I'm going to do it or how you can follow along if you want to. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today going into that in a little bit more detail. There's three ways that you can follow along while watching this video. And I'm going to demonstrate all three for you right now. The first is by not drinking, and it looks something like this. I don't really recommend doing it that way. Number two is you can do this while drinking, and that looks something like this. Wow, that's better. If you didn't catch it, let me do it again. Definitely recommend option two. Option three is you can follow along while actually tasting wine. So there's a difference between tasting and drinking. And the tasting I'm going to do is going to be a little bit more in depth, and you don't have to go as nuts as I'm going to do. In fact, I don't recommend it. So I'm going to recommend two different ways you can taste. Kind of a more simplified version where you're just a little bit more aware of what you're doing. And then there's the full-on nut job version that I'm going to be doing. So we're going to spend a few minutes talking through what those look like. First, tasting should be fun. Whether you're tasting or drinking along, this should be a fun process. I always tell people to drink what you like, but at the same time, we tend to be like the Bard and Bellas and we just stick to what we know. So hopefully this is going to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit and be a little bit more adventurous than you otherwise would have been. Now, we all have our own sensations in terms of our taste buds, our olfactory systems. So there's going to be some subjectivity, and what I taste might be different than what you taste, and that's totally okay too. There's certain things that are just going to be objectively true as well. Like you might look at this wine and go, oh, that looks like a white wine and yeah, it smells like Busch Light. No, that is just, no. There are certain things that are empirically true and false, but for the most part, we're going to have a lot of subjectivity here, and it's okay for you to sense what you sense and for me to sense what I sense, and they don't have to be the same thing. Next, I want you to note that I am not tasting these wines blind, and I don't recommend you do it either. Every once in a while, if you want to have a dinner party and you do a blind tasting, have at it, it's kind of fun, but it's not as educational as you might think. What's going to be really beneficial here is knowing exactly what you're drinking and being able to identify certain traits about that wine that are going to be common threads with it. So the next time you have it, you're like, oh yeah, of course, this is what this tastes like. And that way you know when you're at a restaurant, you're looking at a huge menu, you can go, I've had that before and I remember this is what it tastes like and I like it. I'm going to give it a try instead of getting the prisoner again. One last thing that I'm going to suggest is while you're doing this, do something I'm not doing, and that is, if you can, drink with a friend and have 2 bottles. So I'm just going to be doing 1 bottle of each varietal, and if you can have someone else to help you go through more than 1 bottle of it, getting 2 is really going to help this process of learning these wines, because each producer might make it a little bit differently. One region of Grenache might be different than another region of Grenache. Different vintages are going to make a difference. So if you can get 2 of the same varietal and really do a compare and contrast, that is going to enhance this experience for you greatly. So highly recommend that if you've got a drinking buddy that you can enjoy this with. All right, if it's the day of tasting for you, first thing you need to do is set up your environment. Now you'll notice that I'm here in my closet under my stairs and it's 55 degrees in here. Probably not the best temperature for a tasting environment, but it's not bad, I'll survive. But keep in mind, a lot of us tend to open a bottle of wine while we've already started making dinner. And if you're going for your first smell of this wine after you've already started sauteing some garlic and olive oil, your nose is already jacked. So give some thought to the environment, and are you going to get the most out of this experience in the situation you're in? The other reason I'm in this room, I've got a lock on the door, so there's no kids in here. I'm going to be pretty distraction free while I do this tasting, and if you can do that, that's even better as well. You also want to pay attention to the sense of yourself. So I'd recommend doing this without having any perfume or cologne on or any scented lotions or any lip balm. And dear God, Please don't be chewing gum while you're doing this either. So just pay attention to the things that might be affecting all of your senses, and especially your sense of smell and your sense of taste. One last thing for setting up your environment is you're gonna want a nice white backdrop. And for me, I'm gonna be using just a piece of paper. This happens to be the Court of Master Sommelier's deductive tasting format sheet, which is gonna be really helpful in my tasting. So any piece of paper works. If you want to use this, I'll link to it below as well. I've got some easier ones to use that aren't quite as in-depth as this that I'd recommend instead. If you want to be crazy like me, go nuts. But if you've got a dinner plate or a white tablecloth, anything white is going to get the job done. You really want to be able to see the color against a clear backdrop to help identify the nuances of the colors. Okay, let's get to the fun part. So first step in tasting is using your senses. And there's two methods I'm going to teach you. The easy one is just a quick eyes, nose, mouth, brain. Use those 4 organs and you're going to do just fine. And here I am giggling at it because I said organs. Thank God my wife doesn't watch these videos. Number 2 is the 5 S's, or I'm even going to do the 6 S's. So you've got see, swirl, smell, sip, savor, and then score. So I'll go into those in a little bit more detail. Let's start with seeing the wine. So you're going to want to have, again, your white backdrop. Put your glass at about a 45-degree angle and look through it and have that white backdrop against it. So you're looking for things like, is the wine clear? Is it cloudy? How bright is it? What color is this, red or white? What degree of red is this? Can I actually see through this? And with this one in particular, I can see some of the lines in the paper through the red. If I had a thicker, darker wine, I might not be able to see anything through this. So those are the things we're looking for. The hue is going to tell us quite a bit about the wine. A darker blue color might indicate this has higher acidity. Some orange around it might indicate a little bit lower acidity. It might indicate older age. Another thing that might indicate age, the vintage on the bottle. So again, that's why we're not doing this blind. We don't need to make this harder than it needs to be. Next, we're going to give a swirl. And the swirl, it's fun, it's pretty. You get to watch the legs come down, and those can maybe tell you a little bit about the alcohol level. But really, the swirl is to set up the next step, which is the smell. The smell, you really want to get your nose in there. For some people, if you've got a really sensitive nose, you might be able to be a little bit above or below or around it. Generally, they'll really get your nose in there. And what I want you to try to do is detect 2 to 3 different scents that are fruit related, and 2 or 3 that maybe aren't fruit related. And you're going to do the same thing when you sip it as well. This is going to come in handy later. But give it a good smell, and then we're going to go on to the taste. So with that sip, I swish it around a little bit. You really want to coat your mouth, get it everywhere. I'm instantly noticing the tannins drying out my lower lip and gums to the point where I can feel it sticking to my teeth. Those are your tannins. I'm also getting this juiciness in the back of my mouth. That's the acidity coming through. So as you're noticing when you do your sip, you're looking for sweetness, you're looking for tannin, you're looking for acidity, the alcohol level. Feel that little bit of burn maybe in the back of your throat. Granted, you're not drinking 100 proof whiskey and you've got that heat, but you can feel a little bit of the alcohol in the back of your throat and just kind of gauge, is it low, medium, high alcohol level? Again, the alcohol is right there on the bottle, so you've got that to help you, but learn to identify oh, this is what 13% alcohol feels like. This is what 15% alcohol feels like. So the next thing we're going to do is savor the wine. And there's a really important step in here, and that is what's called retronasal breathing. So take another sip, swallow it. Before you open your mouth, I want you to breathe out through your nose. This is going to give you some really intense aromas and flavors that you maybe didn't pick up the first time you smelled it, the first time you tasted it. It's going to come back through the nasal passage, and it's going to wow you. So give that a try. I'm going to do it right now because it's really fun. That's so cool. So give retronasal breathing a try and focus on what are some of those other things you picked up. Was there another fruit flavor, another thing you picked up? I got a little bit of cedar this time. So pick up on a few additional things with that savor part of this. So now that you're done sipping and savoring, next thing you need to do is score the wine. Just give a minute to think about it. Did you like it? Why did you like it? Did you not like it? You know how much it cost and what you think of it. Was this a good value? Are you gonna have this again? Those are just a couple things to think about. Jot down a couple notes. And as you're jotting down notes on it too, just focus on a couple simple little cues. So if we were drinking Sauvignon Blanc, for example, I might write down crisp acidity, smells like grass. And those are things that maybe are fairly unique to Sauvignon Blanc, certainly compared to other whites. So what are those little cues that are going to help you really identify this wine? It doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to write a bunch of poetry and have this elaborate prose like you're writing for Wine Spectator. So just write down something that's going to be helpful for you for next time. So there you have it. That is tasting wine. Whether you're using the full-on deductive tasting format or something a little bit more simple, this is really going to help you enjoy this process and get a little bit more out of your wine drinking experience. For those of you that want to follow along, I have lined up right here the 4 bottles that we're going to have in the month of January. So if you want to go to a wine store and pick out all of them right now, have at it. We're starting with Aglianico in week 1, moving on to Albarino, Barbera, and then Bordeaux. The Bordeaux, I'm kind of cheating a little bit with Bordeaux, but this is my show. I can do what I want. I'll explain more when I get to that week as to why I'm doing that. But I did want to put all of them there. So if you want to make one shopping trip for the month, they're all right there. Here's a picture of them right here, and there's a description of each one below. It's important to note, I don't think you really need to get the exact same ones that I got. Just focus on getting the varietal. I also want you to try to spend between $15 and $25 on each of these. If you want to spend more, go nuts. But I don't want you to spend less than $15. And the major reason for that is because we're dealing with a lot of old world wines. When you start to get below that price point, you're getting some things that maybe are a little bit more mass produced, and you're not going to necessarily get something that I think is truly representative of that varietal. So if you can spend 15 to 25, that's awesome. Please do that. That's it for this week. Sorry this was a little long, but I wanted to make sure we covered all of our bases and you had a good foundation for how to taste wine. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe below, and until next week, cheers.